views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey friends, it is time for the Bronx Buzz. It's nice to be with you again. We have a really good show for you today. In case you don't know, the Bronx Buzz is about Bronx journalists, Bronx reporters, Bronx talk show hosts, which we're going to find out more about in just a moment, podcasters, and we try to get a little bit of the inside so you can find out who's saying and doing what and what they're all about when they write stuff for you and when they publish stuff for you, when they put stuff out on the airwaves or on the internet, so to speak. But we will start right now by going downtown to Lower Manhattan and our very good friend and colleague and buddy, Abigail Savitch-Lew with City Limits. Nice to always have you on the show, Abby.
Thank you so much, Gary. It's great to be back.
So I was all prepared to review the article that you wrote about the Land Use Committee and the City Council passing the Jerome Avenue rezoning, but you informed me, now we are taping a couple of hours before it's airing on Thursday night, but you informed me just before the show you received a missive of some sort from CASA, which is the community organization that has been kind of representing the Bronx public in this rezoning. And so literally even before you're going to publish it, because I know there'll be a great story in City Limits, tell me a little bit about what you received and what this is all about.
Yes, absolutely. So basically last week we reported that the City Council Land Use Committee had approved the rezoning, as you'd said. It still needs to go to the City Council, but it's expected to pass the City Council as well. And we reported on how Council Member Vanessa Gibson and Council Member Fernando Cabrera, who negotiated some of the investments that will accompany the rezoning and some of the initiatives, how they were pleased with the ultimate package they were able to secure from the de Blasio administration. Right. However, today I received basically a very comprehensive email from CASA and from the Bronx Coalition for Community Vision, which has long had a lot of concerns about this rezoning. And they basically go into why, quote, the current plan will accelerate the displacement of current residents and businesses and fail to provide middle-class wages and careers in the building and construction trades for local workers, end quote. So it goes in depth into a variety of ways. It feels that the plan still falls short. For instance, it says that, yes, they are very happy to see that the city is committing funding to preserving more units of affordable housing. But couldn't this have been done without a rezoning? And also it says that even with the rezoning, it says that, with this rezoning, there's no guarantee that a lot of this housing will actually be affordable to people in the neighborhood. And they also have a lot of concerns about the lack of sufficient strategies in place to make sure that local people get good union type jobs. Right. So, yeah.
Well, so let's break it down a little bit. Yet again, and still, the key word when we're talking about housing and building new housing and rezonings is affordable. And then, of course, it becomes affordable for who? Maybe what I can afford is not what you can afford, which may or may not be what other people can afford. So that's one question. Before we break down what they're saying, let's just review the quote-unquote package that the city and the Land Use Committee worked out, and it included, and let's be clear, and I'm reading it from your article, so if I get it wrong, it's because you got it wrong. 2 new schools with 458 seats, which will be located, one in District 10, one in District 9. The preservation, and this of course becomes the question mark, of 25 1,500 units of existing affordable housing over the next 2 years, which is a raise from the original plan that the city had had. So they bargained for that. A $1.5 million funds to help auto businesses that are displaced relocate, and other task force on public health. There's an addition of senior citizen housing. Before we evaluate CASA's concerns, that sounds to me like, in a way, as good a package as I have seen, maybe other than the Kingsbridge Armory, in terms of kind of a trade of what the city got. Did you feel that this was an adequate or a viable package for the community by the city?
Well, I have to say I just don't really feel I'm in a position to judge as a reporter. I really think that this is really a controversial topipic that is best evaluated by the local residents there.
Right.
And I think that there's continued disagreement. One interesting thing that happened at the meeting was that at the land use committee meeting was that even Councilmember Francisco Moya, who's the new chair of the subcommittee on zoning, expressed a lot of concerns about what was passed, just especially in terms of the lack of what he felt was like a clear standard for safety and wages of construction workers. Of course, this is not just the Jerome Avenue rezoning. It really applies to all the rezonings if he has those
Right.
concerns.
I was actually, one of the questions I had in my mind to ask you is comparing, let's say, this package and this zoning consideration with all the other, because you cover the zonings all over the city. Is this basically what the city has been doing? Is this a better package? Is this a good package? You know what I mean? Give us some context with where this falls. Or did the Bronx do very well, let's say, compared to some of the other places?
Well, I think that one thing that's worth, I think actually that would be a really great story that we haven't done, sort of comparing.
There you go. Give me a little credit for it.
Right, yeah. But I will say a few things, which is that that each neighborhood is different, right? And so, for instance, Jerome Avenue has already, over the past few years, had a lot of investment in preservation work done and affordable housing development done. For instance, Inwood has received very little affordable housing development, and it's sort of as neighborhoods differ, then they the different opportunities, I guess, present themselves for different types of investment.
Okay.
But I would say that one thing that's interesting is as the process has moved forward, there are more anti-displacement strategies in place. When East New York was rezoned, there was no right to counsel for tenants in housing court. There was no certificate of no harassment to ensure that landlords were required to prove they were not harassing tenants before they did development. Now, all those things are in place, not just for Jerome Avenue, but also for, they apply retroactively to the other rezoning areas. Yeah.
Do you feel that both council members Gibson and Cabrera could feel good? In other words, they basically, and I remember I interviewed Vanessa Gibson, and she told me this isn't going to happen until I get funding for parks, new schools, et cetera, et cetera. I think from their perspective, irrespective of what community members and advocates might think, that they would say, wow, we did pretty good, because in the past, in the Bronx and elsewhere, the city would come and there would be a rezoning plan and they would just bulldoze, frankly, over everything. In this case, they got something out of it.
Yeah, I think they were pleased. And I think that, for instance, Councilmember Gibson has long said that she wanted to, so the city earlier had committed 15,000 units, right, and of preserving affordable housing.
I think it was 1,500.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. 1,500.
Well, and it came right from your articles. There you go.
Right. Just misreading myself. And she had said, I want that higher. I want that to be something like 2,500. And she did get that,
Right.
Or she had said, I want some funding for, to help auto workers and auto businesses that might be displaced, and she did get that. So she did live up to some of the things that she said she would do.
Right. I wonder if, just thinking about it, $1.5 million, it depends on how many businesses. That doesn't stretch very far. If you've got a viable business and you've got to find new space, I don't know how many businesses could be accommodated with that kind of money. To me, evaluating what I read, and I've read a lot of stuff about the way this package came down, the question that CASA is asking is a viable one, and that's about displacement. The rents are going to go up, and even if you say, well, we preserved it for existing affordable housing for 2 years, well, 2 years is not it sounds nice, but what happens after 2 years? I mean, I think some of these questions are important questions to answer. So when it goes, so now it'll be on the 21st, I believe. It's going to be
Yes.
voted on in the city council. You said right at the top you think it's going to pass. Do you have any doubt that it's going to pass, or do you think there will be some questions asked, and maybe the representatives, Gibson and Cabrera, will bring up some of these items and say, wait a minute, before we pass this, we've got to do something else?
Well, I'm not very optimistic. If you're on the side of CASA and you're really concerned about displacement of residents and businesses, I would say that I think that it's important that all voices continue to be expressed. But I mean, just looking at the precedents, it's anytime a rezoning has been passed by the land use committee, it's gone on and been passed by the council.
Especially when the home council member, and in this case members, have basically said they have endorsed the plan. So that, it's really a fascinating study. And what you said just a moment ago about, well, certain considerations were gotten in previous rezonings. Well, certain considerations were gotten in this rezoning, and then you look to the future. And I remember, although it's not been implemented yet, the community benefits agreement for the Kingsbridge Armory was a landmark agreement. If they could finally get that going, maybe that would set a precedence for the future that would include, more considerations for communities. I guess that would be the way we've got to look at it.
And I think the question of whether the things that that CASA is asking for can actually be continue, can they continue to fight for them, is also an interesting question. Like, I've been reporting today on East Harlem and how that rezoning passed in November, but there's still a lot of concerns with it, and advocates are continuing. Well, some of them are suing the city, but some of them are also trying to push within their reality for more change.
Right. I was not able to see the material from CASA because you got it and we were boom on the air, so I haven't even had a chance to look at it. But one of the things that you had talked about was, is it worth doing this rezoning at all? I'll tell you, that is a very hard thing to fight right now, because there is a lot of optimism about, development, whether it be in the Bronx or elsewhere. And I'll tell you, maybe you can get some considerations. I don't see the clock being turned back on this one at all. That's my own thought. I'm assuming you agree with me.
I guess, do you mean that by clock turning back?
Well, meaning that there's no way there's no way they're going to say, in other words, they're still saying maybe that we don't think this zoning is worth doing at all. At this point, that's not a discussion that's going to happen. The only thing that might happen is further negotiation. I guess that's my point.
Well,
we're going to have to wrap it up, Abby, so that'll be your last statement. Go ahead. What do you want to say?
Yes, I haven't been able to read the CASA statement in full yet, but I know last time their ask was that the zoning be reduced by half.
Yeah, they can ask. I'd be shocked. Anyway, that's my own comment. Abigail Savitch-Lew, you do just an amazing job and have been an amazing partner for us here on the Bronx Buzz and for all of us in the Bronx and the city of New York, and we always look forward to reading your work. We'll read what you write about the CASA statement, and on we go. Thank you for your time this evening on the Bronx Buzz.
Thank you so much, Gary.
Great. I should also mention, folks, on Bronx Talk, the plan is that both Council Member Cabrera and Gibson will join us on Bronx Talk after the vote, probably on Monday the 26th. Still working out those details. Don't take my word for it, but it is what we're working on. So we'll continue to cover it here on BronxNet Television. Going to take a break. Going to switch gears totally to something new and different. We're going to talk about podcasting and a new Bronx podcast and the whole concept in general. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to take a break, and then we'll come back and we'll do that.
Sure, I look cute now, but when my owner lost his job, it was rough. I was living on the street, and one night, me and this Cocker Spaniel got into it so bad, I wound up looking like an ice cream cone. I cried a little bit, but thankfully I got rescued, so I'm running, I'm jumping, all back to my old self, and I'm ready to give unconditional love, even if you put a lampshade on my head.
It's not always easy being a dad.
Do you have panda asthma too? Does that run in the family? This is the home of the most priceless kung fu artifacts.
But when you make an effort,
Dad, we're not supposed to touch anything.
Oh, sorry.
Go along, son.
it's always worth it.
Whoa, master!
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
I am gonna get you. I'm gonna get you.
Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov to learn more.
Hamilton was adopted from a rescue in 2008. He really likes to be around people. And as soon as I start to make my breakfast, Hamilton is right there. I get out my mat and I'm doing a downward dog and he's underneath. He's quite the pug about town. He gets invited to a lot of parties. He knows he's a pretty big deal. I mean, look at this little face. How could you not love him?
Hey, back with you on the Bronx Buzz, and we got a really cool segment coming up. Listen, the media has changed from when I started doing media. I started doing radio. You don't even want to know how long ago. And then, of course, we've done television here on BronxNet Television for many, many years. But the world is changing. Media is changing. We have the internet. We have new opportunities for people to communicate. And I have two people in the studio with me who are doing just that. We're going to welcome Erik Schell from Radio Free. Hold your breath, ladies and gentlemen. Bay Ridge. I know, it's Brooklyn. I can't help him. He's going to have to fight his way out of it. But Erik Schell, welcome to the Bronx. Nice to have you.
Thank you for having me.
And also Desiree Joy Frias from Radio Free. This will sound more familiar. South Bronx. Nice to have you, Desiree. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you.
So the reason that we brought him, because you really did you start this idea of, now this is podcasting, by the way. I'm sorry I didn't introduce that properly. Did you start the idea of Radio Free Bay Ridge or whatever?
Not at all, and I would get in serious trouble if I did.
If you
So Bay Ridge is where Radio Free Bay Ridge, of course, started, but that was started by Rachel Brody, and I joined on after their first episode, and we met Desiree not long after that.
And how long ago was that?
That was 6 months as of last weekend.
So just give a little background about why you do it, what you do, and then we're going to ask her about how we're going to do it better because we always do it better.
In the Bronx.
That's right.
We're so competitive. It's terrible.
We're very scared of the Bronx. She's already moving faster than we did.
That's right. You're on TV. Go ahead.
The idea behind it was we wanted to be very intentional about making progressive media hyper-local, inside of the community, talking about community issues in a very explicit progressive light. We wanted to have a platform for people who normally don't get it, like city councilors who need to get their message out. We just did the New York 11 Democrats. They all just came through the studio. And then deep dives on issues like security or anything that might come up.
Jerome Avenue rezoning, which we just talked
Exactly.
about.
Rezoning is on the table.
Why podcasting? And now I'll give you a little historical background. Of course, I did radio, of course, decades before this. When you would want to, and we had them in the Bronx, if you wanted to start a radio station, you were fighting the FCC because you needed a frequency, because otherwise you weren't going to get it out there. And we had many people who had pirated radio stations. But of course, in time, if they had a frequency, they would get shut down. The internet just provides incredible opportunity, right?
Yeah. Platform reach is number one, hands down. I was in internet radio for 2 years, and I ran a station, 70 DJs. The impact was minimal. It's when you can put it in an easy place for people to get, normally on their commute. That's when the views really start coming in. It's where your platform really starts coming across.
And last question, and then we're going to go to Desiree. In this day and age, we talk about 2-minute videos, people's attention spans are short. But I hear all the time that people say, oh, but if you got a podcast, and then I leave it on in my office, and all of a sudden for 35 minutes, they're listening to a podcast. It's interesting because that's, in my way of thinking, old-fashioned radio, but it's modern, right?
Yeah, that argument.
It's crazy.
That argument about people's attention span, I think it falls short. I think if you trust your listeners, they will meet you where you meet them.
And if they trust who is delivering the material.
Right.
Of course, I would always believe that. Desiree, so why and how did you get involved, and what made you think of saying, let's do this in the South Bronx?
So I met Rachel and the team at a protest for their Congressman Dan Donovan, who was putting through some restrictive legislation for women's rights, for access to health care. And I met them in Bay Ridge. I traveled all the way down there. And I ended up meeting this wonderful team of activists that is creating a podcast that was really helping shape their community. And they joked that night when we got dinner, you should do Radio Free South Bronx. And I was like, yeah, sure, in my free time, right? I'm finishing law school and I'm looking for a job. And then I started to think about it and I said, wow, I really should do Radio Free South Bronx. I really should amplify the voices in my community.
And, I can't tell you a lot of the inside about what's going on in Bay Ridge, but once you open this up in the Bronx or in the South Bronx, my goodness gracious, the issues are just, we cover them. I spend all day, every day covering them.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're excited about the possibilities.
Yeah, you just mentioned the Jerome Avenue rezoning. That's definitely something that we want to talk about in our podcast. And there's a lot of issues to cover, but more importantly, there's a lot of stories to tell. And I want people who have not had a chance to tell their own story to come on the show and tell it.
I'm going to add one more. More importantly, there are voices in the Bronx that need to be heard.
Yes.
And as opposed to, listen, I'm not talking down my own media here at BronxNet Television, but as opposed to a more formal place, this is not as formal. So you brought, this was fascinating, and thank Desiree for doing this. So they brought the actual equipment that they use to do this. Why did you bring this, and what does this demonstrate to people in the Bronx?
So I have no tech background, and I'm not very handy with tech, but with just some basic tools that I bought on Amazon, I was able to produce what came out sounding like a high-quality podcast.
Wow.
So right here we have the Yeti.
I'm going to hold that up so people can see it.
We have the Yeti. This is the blackout version, and this is
You
just...
call it a Yeti, I mean, we call it a microphone.
Yeah, that's the brand of the microphone. But this is just a USB microphone that I plug into my laptop. No drivers needed, no special, I have a free software. And that's what I use. You can use it to record
And so if we
interviews like
put
these.
it in the middle of the table, we'd get pretty good audio?
Absolutely,
Wow.
clear, crystal clear. And then when
Out
I'm
of curiosity, what's the price on it?
So I got it on sale for about $130.
Wow.
So I got a really good deal.
Amazing.
But you can get
Amazing
cheaper
technology.
ones. You can get cheaper ones
Don't
and
get
also
cheaper,
get the same
the
quality.
good quality. Well, I've been in the business a long time. You want good quality. Okay,
And
now
then
what is this?
This is a portable microphone.
I'm going to hold it up so
Yeah.
that they can see it. Go
This
ahead.
is a Zoom portable microphone. This one was $80, and it allows you to go anywhere and interview people out on the street.
So you could be outside and do like a little podcast at an event or at a
Exactly.
protest or whatever it is.
In my last episode about the town hall regarding the new prison that, the new jail that
Is
Mayor
being
de Blasio
proposed, yeah.
wants to propose in the South Bronx, I was able to interview people right there in front of the town hall.
How often do you do it? When do you do it? I mean, we want people to find it. We want people to check it out. Tell me all about it.
So we don't have a set schedule. We're all volunteers.
Welcome to the
We're
internet.
we're all volunteers.
Set schedule. I gotta be here
God.
at a certain time every single
No,
week.
I'm looking for a job. You know, we have other lives outside of this, but what we are encouraging is other people to open their own Radio Frees, and we'll help you. We want to get other people, especially young people, high school students. Yesterday we saw the student walkout. We want those people to have a platform to share their voice and their story.
And imagine if you're doing Radio Free South Bronx, we could do Radio Free Claremont, we could do Radio Free Burnside, we could Radio Free Jerome Avenue.
Absolutely.
We
It's a
could
lot
do
of
Radio Free
neighborhoods.
Highbridge. I mean, I don't have to list you the 60 neighborhoods in the Bronx.
The cost of entry is relatively low for this medium, so you have an opportunity to be very accessible to people who might have the desire to do it.
Erik, let's talk about that in terms of, she's made the sale, I think, incredibly well. What do people have to do to, if they say, wow, what a great idea, I want to set it up, I want to use my voice, I want to be a great Bronxite, what do they got to do?
First thing they should do is talk to us. They should get in touch with Desiree, should get in touch with me.
How do we do that?
Well, you can email us at
Email, that's what we want.
Erik at radiofreebayridge.org.
And my email is radiofreesouthbronx@gmail.com.
Radio Free South, and if they send you an email and say, hey, I want to do this, I want to know how to do this. Do you have a sense, Desiree, and it's out there, how many regular podcasters or podcasts do we have? There's no way of knowing, right?
No, there's hundreds of
Hundreds?
In New York City alone, there's hundreds of podcasts, and they're on a variety of topics. Anything that people are passionate
Food,
about.
health, running.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know, neighborhoods, gentrification, development. I don't know. You can think of every topic we do.
And it's right on your cell phone, so you can take it with you. Take it on the MTA. It's downloaded. You don't need service.
It's a crazy world. Radio Free South Bronx
Yes.
at gmail.com.
Yes.
And you are?
Erik
At
at radiofreebayridge.org.
radiofreebayridge.org. So, and then if you go there, where can we find you? I got to get out of here.
Yeah,
because they're
so
shouting at me.
our podcast is found on iTunes, Google Play, and SoundCloud.
And you look for Radio Free South Bronx.
Yep.
Same as that, but Radio Free Bay Ridge.
Wow, what a world, and we are just living in it. And I just couldn't be happier to have Erik Schell and Desiree Joy Frias with us. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we got to go. They are waving at me. Good night. Thank you for being a great Bronxite. And we'll see you Monday night on Bronx Talk. We're going to do a thing on teen pregnancy this Monday night on Bronx Talk. So we'll see you then. Then we'll do Jerome Avenue rezoning the week after. And then we're doing debates. It's going to be...
Thanks, Gary.
don't go away. Don't go away. Great. We give it a little plug.